Thank you so much for joining us on the Dwelling Show. I'm your host, Ola Dantes. I've got Nick Prefontaine with us today. Hey, Nick, how you doing?
Hey, Ola, how are you?
Doing fantastic. Thank you for joining the show. I really appreciate you for taking the
Happy
time
to
out.
be here. Happy to
Awesome.
be here.
Awesome. So, I mean, obviously, I've read your profile and I can read it out again, but I'm pretty sure you have a fascinating and amazing story to share. So I know you can definitely, tell us that story a little bit better than I can. So can you tell our dual listeners a little bit more about yourself, what you're doing in real estate and what you've been up to lately?
Yeah, sure. A little bit about myself. Do you want me, Ola, to go into telling about my story, about what happened?
Yeah, sure. Please, let's jump right into it.
Okay, sure. So back in 2003, I was in a snowboarding accident and I went off a jump, landed on my head, and I was in a coma for 3 weeks. I really don't remember a month. And then out of that, when I was in the coma still, the doctors told my parents that I probably wouldn't walk, talk, or eat on my own again. So it was a normal day. It was a Wednesday. We had ski club. So I don't know, anyone who is ever involved in ski club, you know that you get out a touch earlier than everyone else just to get the buses to go to the mountain and everything. So on the way to the mountain, I brought my stuff on the bus to get ready, and I noticed that I had forgot one thing that I usually most of the time bring to ski club, which was my helmet. I didn't think anything of it. I just thought I'd be careful, just like any other day. So I got to the mountain, and because we headed straight for the top. On the way to the top, we noticed that it was very icy because it had been raining. People were wiping out everywhere. However, that didn't stop me. It wasn't my first time snowboarding, so I knew what I was doing. I got to the top, buckled in, and headed straight for the biggest jump with all my speed. And I was really tucking, getting ready for the jump. And going up to the jump, I caught the edge of my snowboard, which threw me off balance. Then I was too close to the top to stop because I was going so fast. So I had to go off it in the air. I went like this, and I landed on my head. And I wasn't wearing a helmet. So that was the last thing that I remember. And as I said, the doctors told my parents that I probably wouldn't walk, talk, or eat again. And here I am.
Yeah, you are doing well, crushing it in real estate. You guys are doing an amazing job down there. And thank you so much for sharing that story. Being vulnerable. I really appreciate that. So can you kind of, tell us a little brief, how you made that transition from that, and kind of what you're doing in real estate now?
Sure, yeah. So I had to, after I got home, I was in inpatient rehab in Boston for less than a couple months. It felt like a couple of years, but then after I got out of there, I had to go to outpatient rehab for 6 months after that to learn how to do everything again, to walk, talk, eat, and to more refine it. And then shortly after that, when I was in high school, I was always on this self-improvement train, if that makes sense. I was always looking to grow, always reading the next book. I think I read Think and Grow Rich when I was like 15. Since then, I've read it a bunch, of course. And when I was in high school, around when I was 15, I read The Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. And my dad, I grew up in a real estate family. So when I was younger, all I was around was my dad, who was a builder at the time. When I was younger, building houses, had his own company. From there, he transitioned into being a realtor, then an investor, then back to a realtor. So I was always around it. I couldn't get away from it. He was also, just because of his success and everything, he was on stage speaking and like motivational speaking, that kind of thing. So going back to my accident, in my hospital room, there were signs all over on every wall. Like with each step I take, I'm getting stronger and stronger. And all inspirational things like that that I could look to, and I couldn't walk at the time, so I literally couldn't get away from it. Ola. Um, so everywhere I looked, that's what I saw. But then after that experience, I was interested in real estate. I was reading that Robert Kawasaki book. Then I was door knocking pre-foreclosure doors when I was 16, in some not so good areas, some not so good cities, um, local, like close to me. And I would do 50, upwards of 50, 60, even 70 doors, I think was my record in a day. And I would go to these people's home, knock on their door, and because actually my cousin, Mike DeGillis, and I got sent out to the number one guy in the country who was knocking on pre-foreclosure doors at the time, back in 05, 06 timeframe. We flew out to him in San Diego. So I got to see firsthand what the best approach was and what worked. So I came back to the East Coast and implemented that, and it really worked. And I really had success in that. I was still in high school. That was only a couple years after my accident. So I would set appointments up with the investor, either my dad or his partner, to come out and buy their property, help them out of that situation. And then after I graduated high school, I got my real estate license. So I got my real estate license in March of 2008. If any of the listeners have any knowledge of what happened around that time, they can understand the reason why I smile, because I couldn't predict that was going to happen, but because it happened, because the crash happened, I think it made me a better realtor, because that was all I knew. I didn't know a good market. All I knew around me was people complaining about how bad things were and how good they used to be, but I didn't know how they used to be. So I got resourceful. I learned how to make a living, to support myself then. So that may have been a good thing. And then after, I think in 2014 it started, I was still a realtor. I had my license up until January 2016, but my dad started doing these types of deals, this function that we're doing, this niche, if you will, back in at the end of 2013. So by the end of 2014, he asked me, well, can you help me with some of my marketing? And oh yeah, by the way, I was reluctant to help him out, because I was like, no. I got my own thing here. I got my own thing as a realtor. I'm making a good income. I'm doing well with that. I was reluctant to even join him. I started helping with the marketing. Then I could see, okay, he really needs help with the buyers, because he just couldn't get to them. So I started doing that more and more in 2015. And then 2016, my income as a realtor was here, and as an investor was down here. And then over the years that I was working with him, it flipped to I was only making a very small percentage of my income from being a realtor, from having my real estate license. So it didn't make sense to keep my license anymore. So in January of 2016, I let my license go and joined him full time.
Wow. I mean, thank you so much for sharing all of that, Nick. That's definitely chronological. I really like that. I was just taking some notes as you were saying all that. Door knocking is synonymous with rejection, right? I mean, if you want to get rejected and, metaphorically get punched in the face, go door knocking, try to sell anything, right? So, of course, that was really good for you at a very young age to kind of understand that rejection is part of success. It's part of the journey to be successful.
Mm-hmm. No, it was fun. I really look back on that, and I'm like, wait a minute. So really and it took me until last QLS event, our big annual event that we have every year. I told my story on stage, and people, or it might have been the year before, but people came up to me and they're like, wait a minute. So you were only 2 years after your accident, being in a coma and having to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again. You were knocking on these people's doors in like not good areas, and I was like, I like kind of in a moment, just kind of sat back and I was like, oh yeah, you're right. That's kind of a big deal. But doing that taught, like you said, taught me that the rejection's a part of the game.
It is part of the game. It is
Yeah.
part of the game. Um, you did mention something that I definitely want us to touch on, though. So you said that, when you went to San Diego, you were door knocking with this, kind of an investor that was doing it, focusing on door knocking. And there were a few
Yeah.
things that you learned. Just for those that might be thinking of perhaps doing that kind of outreach, what were the things that worked and what were the things that didn't work? I was just kind of curious. I wanted us to touch on that real quickly.
Sure, real quick. I'm dying here. Turn the air on. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. So to repeat the question, what did I find that worked?
Mm-hmm. When you were door
knocking, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that was amazing to me is it wasn't about, and this is the whole learning experience about the whole door knocking thing and how much it taught me. It really taught me how to sell. But I would think before doing that you would just go and knock on someone's door, and then they would answer, and then you would give them the pitch right there. Like you gotta hit them. You gotta tell them right there. But the way that he did it, Colin, his name was, it really was fascinating because he would have his list on the clipboard. People that have received notice of defaults from the bank, meaning they had missed a payment or 2 or 3 or even up to 10 or 12. But the bank still hadn't foreclosed. So he would have this list and he would say to them, he would knock on the door, kind of back off a few steps so it wouldn't be intimidating. And then every little thing counts, I think. So then they would come to the door and he would say, oh, I'm sorry to bother you. Could you confirm something? And he looked down at his list and then he showed him, and this is how I did it after I learned from him. He showed him the list that he was working from, and then once they saw their name, they would open up and tell him, well, okay, well, here's what happened. Aunt Susie, she wasn't able to make the payment on time because she broke her leg. She had to get surgery. So, but I just used that example. They would open up once they saw their name on the list. And then once they realized that you weren't like on the other side of the negotiation with them, you were there trying to help them, the conversation went so much easier. So that's what I think I take into everything that we do.
I love that so much. How fascinating. Like you mentioned, and I think this is so key for, our dual listeners here, is you mentioned a couple of things, right? Almost very, almost nuanced, like subtle, like the couple of steps backwards. The first thing you say is like, I'm sorry to bother you. So it's very, very soft in his approach, and then showing the clipboard, being transparent. These are little tricks that you don't get in college, right? I mean, this is literally on the streets learning. And I really like that you teased all those out and you really shared that with us. Thank you so much. I really, even I'm learning so much from that. That is absolutely fascinating.
I still do that to this day. Whenever I knock on someone's door, for whatever reason, it's just like subconscious. I would back off a few steps. I was like, same thing I do.
Amazing. And I'm sure it works all the time. I'm sure.
It's just unconscious now because I've done it so many times.
Right. The other thing I had on my question when you were talking was real estate license. A lot of dual listeners listening to this will be saying, I want to get my license. I'm not sure if I should get my license. What are your thoughts? Should folks go out and get a real estate license? Is that needed to be a successful real estate entrepreneur, or is it needed at all?
It's not needed, but you gotta understand though, the the background that I came from, my dad when I was younger, he was a broker, had his own office. He was selling over 100 homes a year for several years in a row. So I grew up around, that's what I grew up around. So the logical conclusion, the logical thing to do after I graduated high school was, oh, I'm just going to get my real estate license, because that's what I grew up around. So that was easy to me. Not doing this business, being a real estate entrepreneur, as you phrased it, and being a real estate investor, you don't need your license per se. Notice in my story, I said that I actually let my license go back in January of 2016, just because the amount of phone calls and the amount of hassle that I would get, and the amount of time spent that I would get from keeping my license, because you have to go to the continuing education classes and all this stuff. It became so much so that it didn't make sense to do it anymore if I wasn't really getting my income from there, you know?
That
So
makes sense.
you shouldn't seek it out. Like, your listeners shouldn't seek it out if they don't have it. But if you have it, that's okay. You can still do business. You can still buy and sell houses.
Right. Okay. Another thing was, you were saying like how you were a little bit reluctant to kind of jump into the family business, and there's a lot of talk about, folks maybe they should go, work with a father or uncle, or, what has been your own experience in terms of working in a family business? How does that kind of, shape who you are, and, what are your general thoughts on that?
That's a good question. I shortly after graduating high school and then getting my real estate license, my dad and I, even though we weren't always doing the same thing in the same business per se, we always shared an office. So he could be doing something completely different, and I was a realtor, and we would always share an office. So I really got to hear firsthand what he had to go through during the whole 2008 debacle, as he calls it, with the market crashing and everything. And that's how I grew up, and that's how I came up after I graduated high school. That's how I came up. Him and I always shared an office, so it's not for everyone, the whole family business, because that's a different thing entirely. Because that wasn't until just the end of 2014 that I started helping him with this business. So we weren't always doing the same thing for years. We were always just working together. I don't know. It's definitely not for everyone. But where one of our values is clear, blunt, and to the point. So we're not going to hide things or mince words. So it's if we're feeling something, it's going to come up. It's not something that we can just bury and not talk about. But I don't know. It's not a fit for everyone. That's
Right.
for sure.
Right. Thanks for sharing
But I love my family. So I love having the opportunity to work with them too.
Of course, I bet. So I'm just kind of thinking, so you were obviously helping your dad, you started doing some deals with him. Can you kind of find a deal that maybe you really liked, or maybe that you really helped someone? It could be from your real estate days as well. And can you just kind of walk us through that deal as a case study, kind of from, beginning to end?
Sure. Like, all right. So for example, when I was a realtor, Ola, the only way that I could help people, and the only way that I could make a check, that I could make an income, was sell a house, get a commission. Sell a house, get a commission. That's it. I was intrigued by the way that my dad was doing it. I saw him that you could buy the property, get it under contract, whether it's, just you're getting it on a a lease purchase and then offering it out, getting other rent-to-own buyers once you have that right, or buying a property owner financing and then selling it on a rent-to-own. I saw the potential, what can happen, because he would, after he would get that right, he would go out, put it out to the market, so then he gets, say, a $15,000 deposit, $15,000 down payment. Then potentially, not on every single deal, but potentially every single month, he could be getting paid between what the homeowner, what he's buying it for, what they're, in this example, what they have for a mortgage payment. Say it's $1,500, so we get a $15,000 down payment. Let me see, $15,000 down payment. The monthly payment on the seller's mortgage is $1,500. He took it out to the rental market and was able to get a buyer for $1,700. So he made that spread between what the mortgage payment was and what he was able to charge a buyer. So he made that spread every month. Plus he made the buyer's down payment. And then very often he made the third payday more when the buyer got their own loan. So I saw that, and that was kind of eye-opening to me, just because to me, it was a great way to build wealth, what I was seeing, to get off the treadmill. Because like I said, the only thing I knew was sell a house, make a commission. Now you can make a great income from that. I'm not bashing realtors or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, to me, it made sense.
Right.
Being an investor instead.
Right. To me too. I definitely agree with that approach. We definitely dwelling into the quick rounds. These are going to be quick questions, quick answers. You ready, sir?
I'm ready.
All
Fire
right.
away.
Okay. First question. What makes Nick unique? What is that differentiating factor that separates you from the next guy or the next girl?
That's a good question. My story, I would say, and what I've learned because of it, it made me who I am today. And I feel like I have the innate ability to relate to people more so than anyone else, because of the experience that I've gone through. Because as I'm sure you understand, I get people, like, for example, I'm not saying this happens, but that say they have all these excuses for their rent not being in. And my sister used to laugh when her and I were working together here, because she would tell me, well, Nick, why don't you use your story? You have the best response to a buyer's excuse of why they can't pay their rent on time. Yeah. I know everyone has a story. I was in a coma for 3 weeks and had to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again. Where's your rent?
I like that. Second question. What was the last book that you read? And what was the one thing you picked out from that book?
I don't know. I just told you this before the interview here. I literally just finished a book on my Kindle. I think it was yesterday or the day before. I just, for whatever reason, for the life of me, I can't remember it. But I'm going to go with my favorite book that started me down this journey that I've been on of, I guess I would say it's a spiritual, like, energetic, just like really seeing how things work and kind of changing my perspective was, let me see, it was Frequency by Penny Pierce.
Okay.
Then I think it was shortly before or after that, I read Zero Limits by Joe Vitale, and that just kind of kept me going down that path.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
definitely get those in the show notes for our dual listeners.
Yeah, that's those are deep books.
I bet. So final question. Obviously, you're running the business with your dad. You're doing a ton of stuff. I'm sure you obviously got family too. What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? That is all right. So at this point, it's not a good time to talk about it. I'm not sure when the show's going to air, Ola, but um, I'm a huge fan of the Boston Bruins hockey team. They just lost in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, so I'm a little bent out of shape about that. But I love the Bruins. I like going to games a few times a year. I usually enjoy that with family, and friends, and just enjoy that. I would say I really enjoy reading, reading and writing in the mornings. Every morning, I've done this for, I can't even tell you how long anymore. I think it's over 10 years, but I get up in the morning. I have my routine where I meditate. I do Qigong. It's a form of Tai Chi for those that don't know. And then I'll eat breakfast, and then I'll have like 30 minutes to an hour, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending on the day and my schedule, of time to have either my morning coffee, 2 cups of coffee, or if it's days I run, 2 cups of tea, and I just read and I journal and I write, and that's really my thing, my day. That kind of sets me up, and then I just really I really enjoy that.
Awesome.
So,
Awesome. I can relate to some of those. I can relate to some of those for sure. So if there's a dual listener, listening or a fly on the wall, and they're like, wow, I really like this Nick guy story. I mean, it's fascinating. I want to get to know Nick a little bit more. I want to connect with him. Where is the best place people can reach out to you, find you, know you better?
well, I do have a Facebook profile. I'm not on it all the time, but I do have a Facebook profile, so they could send me a friend request there. Also, feel free to shoot me a message on email, and that's Nick at smartrealestatecoach.com. And then I do have a website set up for just more focused on my story and speaking and things like that. And that's just my name, nickprefontaine.com. So they can check that out as well.
Nick, thank you so much for taking time out and chatting with us. Yeah, the Dwelling Show. I super, super, super appreciate it. And thank you so much again. Thank you.
I really appreciate you having me, Ola. It was fun.
That was Nick Prefontaine. I really, really enjoyed that conversation. I mean, just check out his story. That is just absolutely amazing. He got in a coma. He came out, kept pushing, started working with his dad, still doing great things. He had to learn how to eat again, how to read, how to write. And he's still waking up early, meditating, reading, writing, journaling. I mean, these are like things that some of us are still struggling to do every day. So I think that was a really fascinating story. I just wanted to, obviously stop you and just, talk to you guys. So, if you kind of want any kind of inspiration, maybe check out Nick's story again, reach out to him if you want to. I also want to say thank you for following, the Dwelling Show page on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. I just want to say thank you for just supporting us. The podcast keeps growing every single day. And also, I just want to ask for your review as well. We're going to put a link in the show notes. So, just, drop us a review. That really, really helps the show, as you already know, exposes the show to new listenership. So please do that. Review. I really appreciate it. If you obviously have any questions for me as well, feel free to reach out, ola@dwelling.com. Let me know your thoughts, even if you have questions for kind of upcoming episodes as well. I want to hear from you. Thank you so much.